I stood in front of the old gate, fingers loosely holding the strap of my bag, my heart skipping a quiet beat. It had been 5 years since I last came home. 5 years since I sat at that dinner table trying to squeeze into a conversation where I had never really been heard. This time I didn't come home on leave. I came because of my father's company banquet, an important event with executives from the top of the corporation he had served for nearly 3 decades. I wasn't sure what I hoped for. Maybe a shy hug from my mother. A handshake from my father. A simple question like, "How have you been?" But when the door opened, all I heard was the TV blaring. My younger brother, fresh out of business school, was talking about his startup project, eyes lit with confidence. My mother smiled and poured him water. My father nodded in approval. No one turned to me. No one noticed the plain clothes I wore to hide the uniform under my coat. I forced a smile and pulled out a chair. That familiar feeling crept back, half hope, half bracing for disappointment. I've endured military drills in brutal heat, sudden mission deployments, high-stress briefings, but nothing ever made my hands tremble like sitting down at my own family's dinner table. Throughout dinner, every story circled around my brother and our cousin working on Wall Street. They spoke of stocks, fintech, successful young men. At one point my mother turned to me and asked quietly, "You're still in the military?" I nodded silently. The answer hadn't even made it out before my father and brother's laughter cut through the room. I wasn't sure why I came home. Was it the craving for acknowledgement? The fragile hope that after all these years they might see me differently? Or maybe I just wanted to know if I still had a place in this family. But the longer I sat there, the clearer it became. I had returned to the house, but I was no longer someone who belonged to it. I kept sitting there, smiling whenever someone cracked a joke, nodding when a glance passed over me, but inside I was growing colder by the minute. The conversations at the table felt like tiny needles, pricking gently but constantly. "Ben's getting promoted to department head next month, and he's only 29. My mom said proudly, eyes sparkling as she looked at my cousin. My father nodded, impressed. "Now that's a smart path. Successful and no need to go off to some battlefield." Then he turned to my brother and patted his shoulder. "Stick to that direction, son. Don't be like someone else in this family." I didn't need to look up to know who they meant. I smiled, but my throat tightened. I had served for years in the military, walked through harsh landscapes, made life and death decisions in seconds. And yet in their eyes I was just someone. An outsider at my own family's dinner table. I tried to speak up. "Lately I've been commanding a battalion." But before I could finish, my mother cut me off, turning back to my brother. "Go on, dear. What did your boss say the other day?" I fell silent. My sentence left dangling as if it had never been said. Just like me, never truly present in their hearts. I glanced around the room. Everything still looked familiar. Old family photos still hung on the wall. One photo showed me in uniform at my commissioning ceremony, the one I sent invitations for. No one came. I told myself back then, maybe they were busy, maybe there was a reason. But tonight, amidst the laughter and disregard, I finally understood. They never really cared. That feeling of being overlooked, cast aside in the very home where I grew up, wasn't loud. It simply pressed against the heart, slowly, silently, until it became hard to breathe. I had hoped to be heard. But tonight at that dinner table I was just a shadow, lost among my own blood. That night after dinner I sat alone in my old room. Everything looked just as I left it. The worn-out wooden dresser, the painting my mom hung on the wall, the bed with faded blue sheets. But one thing had changed. I was no longer the young woman just out of military school. I opened my suitcase and quietly took out my formal uniform. Every time I held it in my hands, I remembered those early mornings on the field, those long marches through icy winds or desert heat. Every thread, every ribbon on that uniform carried a story, no need to tell it. Just wearing it was enough for others to understand who I was. I hung the uniform in front of me, carefully straightening each crease, each insignia. Not to boast. Not to retaliate. But to remind myself that my worth does not lie in praise. Not even from family. I had seen too many people lose themselves chasing recognition. I was not one of them. Even though the words from earlier still ached, I knew. Reacting emotionally would only make me become exactly who they thought I was. Unstable, weak. Well, I didn't need to get angry. I didn't need to prove myself with words. I would let my presence speak for itself. Tomorrow I would attend the company event with my father. I would walk into that hall as a quiet guest. But if someone recognized me, if the truth came out, it would happen naturally. Not because I demanded it, but because truth always has a way of revealing itself, when you have the strength to wait. I looked into the mirror. My face was calm. No anger. No fear. Only the steady gaze of a woman who had learned to master pain, with discipline, with resolve, and with self-respect. I didn't need to be recognized to know my worth. I only needed to keep walking, true to my values. The next morning I wore plain clothes and sat quietly in the back seat as we headed to the event. My father, my brother, and I. They chatted excitedly about the banquet, about who would be there, about networking opportunities. No one asked why I was coming. I didn't offer. The venue was grand, elegantly decorated. Employees in pressed suits rushed around, eyes scanning for the right handshake at the right moment. I followed my father, keeping just enough distance, not too far to get lost, not too close to stand out. Then he appeared, the CEO. Tall, graying, sharp-eyed. He walked toward my father with a smile and an outstretched hand, but paused when he saw me. His expression shifted ever so slightly. He narrowed his eyes, then smiled and said, "Colonel Williams. What an honor." "Ma'am." A silence swept across the room. My father froze. My brother snapped his head toward me. I smiled softly. Nodded. "Pleasure to be here, sir." He added, "Your work with the Pacific Division was groundbreaking. My son still talks about that leadership seminar you led." I thanked him with a firm handshake, then stepped back. No further explanation needed. I was used to people discovering who I was, when the moment was right. That entire afternoon my father said very little. My brother kept glancing at me like he was seeing me, truly seeing me for the first time. I kept my distance. No accusations. No grand statements. As I had nothing to prove. Respect comes naturally when you live true to your values. When the event ended, I shook hands with everyone, and their eyes had changed. No longer fleeting glances from the night before. They looked at me with genuine respect. I didn't say much. But inside, a quiet wave rose in me. A victory that needs no applause is still a victory. The ride home was quiet. Not like the ride there, no laughter, no chatter. Only silence. Back at the house, I didn't go straight to my room. I stood in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. I looked up when I heard footsteps. It was my father. He stood beside me, silent. I set the glass down and turned to face him. "Dad," I said calmly, "I know you were surprised when the CEO called me Colonel. And I imagine you have questions." He nodded slowly. "But what I want to ask," I continued, "is why, all these years, you and Mom never came to any of my ceremonies. Not one promotion. Not one award. Even when I sent invitations. Even when I called. Even when I bought Mom a plane ticket myself." He pressed his lips together. Didn't deny it. Kept going. "I don't need you to understand everything I do. I don't need praise. But I did need to feel like my family cared. The way you follow every step my brother takes. The way you beam about our cousin's paycheck." I met his eyes. "You think I chose the military because I had no other options. But you're wrong. I chose it because I believe in discipline, in service, in the values it instills. And I've never regretted that." He looked down. It was a long time before he finally said, his voice low, "I didn't know. I guess I thought you were already strong, didn't need anything more." I gave a quiet smile tinged with sorrow. Being strong doesn't mean not needing to be seen. Even a soldier needs a home that knows she exists. No tears. No sudden embrace. But I knew. This silence wasn't the same as before. It wasn't indifference. It was the beginning of truth. Acknowledged. Faced. And perhaps the beginning of something new. The next morning, as I was brewing coffee in the kitchen, my mother walked in. She didn't rush around like usual. She stood still for a moment, then said softly, "You're up early, like when you were little." I smiled, said nothing. The cold wall in my chest from the night before felt lighter now, as if a thin layer of ice had begun to melt. She sat down, spinning her teacup between her hands. "Your father couldn't sleep last night," she said. "He didn't say anything. But I know he was thinking about you. About everything he's missed." I looked at her, not with anger. Just a gentle nod, like opening a door instead of closing it. Not forgiveness in silence, but an invitation to understanding. "I'm sorry," she said, voice honest, "for not showing up at the important moments. I thought you were strong, that you didn't need anyone. But I forgot. You're still my daughter." I stepped closer, placing my hand gently over hers. "I get it, Mom. Everyone has their reasons. But yesterday, when the CEO called me ma'am, were you proud?" She looked at me. Her eyes lit up. "Of course. I've never heard anyone talk to you like that. You were different, not just because of your rank, but because of your presence. You've grown in ways I never imagined." I gave her a small smile. "I don't need constant praise. I just need you to know I'm still here. Still Natalie, uniform or not." It wasn't a long conversation, but in every glance, every slow-spoken word, I felt something beginning to heal, quietly, imperfectly, but truly. That afternoon my father called me over and asked, "2 weeks from now, I'm meeting up with some old friends from the barracks. You free? I'd like to introduce you." I nodded, smiling gently. And I knew. Some distances that once seemed impossible. Sometimes all it takes to close them is one honest sentence.